What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller, Tarik LaCour, Shane Black, Marc Henry, all from Hook'emHeadlines.com and the Hook'em Horn Show. We are coming back at y'all today with our season preview, week one preview, SEC preview. We got like a jam-packed show today. We're gonna try to get as much content as we can for y'all in for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. We've been coming back more with the weekly shows on a regular basis to, try to get y'all some of the late fall camp intel. Now moving into the regular season, it feels like the offseason went by extremely fast. This day and age of the transfer portal, recruiting's been really hot in August. So it really felt like for just Texas fans in general, there's really been no downtime, but it's been a fun stretch for the last couple of weeks, whether you're talking about recruiting or anticipation for the season. Week 0 was a lot of fun. You got some playoff shakeup with the Florida State loss. And I think I don't know about y'all, but I got a lot of entertainment value out of the Nevada SMU game, seeing Jeff Choate and a lot of those former Texas guys do really well. I think Savion scored a touchdown, if I'm not wrong about that. And Nevada, I thought that they were like 25, 30 point underdogs before kickoff in that game. And it was, one score game down to the wire. So great to see, Jeff Choate doing good things out there and some of the Texas X's doing their thing. And so, but yeah, now it's time to talk about week one. As of recording this, we're a few days out from kickoff. My days get all confused for Labor Day because we got 5 straight days of games. So always a fun weekend. But yeah, I'll start here for looking forward to the Colorado State game. I don't know if any of y'all are going to the game on Saturday, but it looks like the weather could be a little sticky, a little nasty on Saturday afternoon. I think low 90s, maybe a little bit of rain. So about a 40% chance. So we could be in for a little bit of a slog at times. Might not be as high scoring, I think, as Vegas had thought initially. I've seen the over-under get bumped down a point or two. That's kind of my opening thought coming into this one is, can Texas outscore Colorado State to the degree that Vegas thinks they might, to where it might be like a 50-20 game? Now looking to be more like maybe like a 42-17, something like that. But I'll pass it over to y'all.
This week I'm not so much worried about points. I'm looking for precision and I'm looking for being a clean team. I don't want to see a bunch of penalties. I don't want to see a bunch of people looking like they're lost. I just want nice, clean, and precision. Well, that we're a well-oiled machine heading before we head up to Ann Arbor. Um, Also needing to make sure that we can run the ball and just run the clock out, especially and be leaning into Colorado State in the third and fourth quarters is what we need to be seeing because the type of size and strength that Texas has should not be matched by Colorado State. So if we do that, I think we should be fine.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think the biggest thing is, everybody's going to be looking at the running game with the loss at the running back position. How does Jaden Blue come out? I think Trey Wisner is a guy that's going to be really critical to the Longhorns running game, and they have to establish that up front with Banks and company. How do they handle the heat coming from Colorado? We'll get to Colorado State here in a little bit, but if it was on the flip side, we'd be talking about the altitude for the Longhorns going up to Colorado. But I think they have the home field advantage. They're going to have their hands full with Colorado State offensively. I think the tackling in the secondary is the thing that's been kind of Texas's downside the last couple of years. How do they establish that? And defensively, they have to set the tone early. I agree with you, Tarik. The turnovers, penalties, things that we don't need to push us, make us lose the field position battle. Those are the things that I think you should look at coming out of the game one. You want to clean things up, like you said, before you head to Ann Arbor.
Yeah, for me, just initial thoughts. I think, like Tark mentioned it, just play a clean game, play it on your terms. Texas fans probably not quick to forget in the 2 games against Group of 5 opponents last year. You're only up 16-3 going into the half against Rice, and I believe it was 10-7 going into the half against Wyoming. And that certainly should not be the case on Saturday. Because I mean, in the SEC, as the season progresses, the margins are going to be razor thin. So we saw Texas struggle, holding leads. So I think I just kind of want to see a consistent level of football for 4 quarters. I do think this is an interesting group of 5 team to play because what Colorado State does well is kind of play up tempo and chuck it around the field. Torrey Horton, we'll get into that, is one of the best receivers in the country. So it's going to put pressure on, the back four early and often, and we'll see how that communication has been shaped throughout the offseason. But just looking forward to the game and certainly super excited to see all the new faces that Texas will be jogging out there on Saturday.
Is this the toughest game y'all think that Texas has during the non-con beside Michigan, obviously? Or do y'all think UTSA is a little bit better?
It's hard
I
to say
think,
because we
yeah,
rated UTSA so much.
right. Yeah,
That's fair.
I think that UTSA brings a challenge because it's a interstate school that wants to knock off Big Brother, which would be A&M or Texas, and we're talking about the Longhorns. And I think that Jeff Traylor's done a wonderful job with that program, kind of bringing them to the forefront of college football, especially in the state of Texas. But I think Colorado State, Shane mentioned it. I think offensively they bring a challenge. They're gonna sling it around. If Gordon's one of those top receivers. He's going to be a high draft pick come in the next NFL draft. I had a chance to see him against Colorado that first game last year, and I was amazed. I knew that his stock was rising up then, and he looked like an NFL receiver against Colorado. So they're going to have their hands full. I agree with Shane wholeheartedly. What they do on the back end is going to be key to stopping those guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too if you look at the matchups because there's some guys that Texas fans will be familiar with here. I think most notably on Colorado State's receiving core is Armani Winfield, former Baylor transfer, one-time Texas commitment. He guy
He
that's
committed while Texas was losing to Kansas State, and then Texas came back and won that game.
yeah, I wasn't going to talk about that, but it
I am.
yeah, it's fair. Um, so a little, maybe a little chip on the shoulder there for some of the other guys. I don't know. That might be looking a little too deep into it, but like, Colorado State, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that they're
Chip on his
probably,
shoulder for what? He decommitted while
no, I was
the
talking
game
about
was going
I was talking
on.
about some of the Texas guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm probably looking a little too deep into that, but it's that saga aside, I don't think it's super far-fetched to say that Colorado State probably has the best receiving core of any of the G5 teams that Texas faces. Like I said, Winfield's pretty solid. Donovan Ollie, another guy, I think he's probably third or fourth in their rotation. And obviously, Torrey Horton being the highlight of the bunch. Colorado State, Shane, you mentioned it. They like to spread you out, predominantly a throwing team, not really a team that's very good at running the ball. I think they averaged around like 92 rush yards per game last season, ranking about bottom 10. I think they were ninth from the bottom in rushing offense last season. They really struggled to run the ball against like just middle to upper tier defensive lines in the FBS. Air Force and Washington State were the two highest graded defensive lines they faced last year in terms of line yards allowed, and they rushed for, I believe it was about 67 yards on 39 attempts. So that said, for Colorado State's ground game, it did improve a little bit down the stretch last season. Justin Marshall, I do believe, is kind of the freshman sophomore back that they had that really broke onto the scene, had a few around 100 rushing yard games to end last season. So gave that what really was a lifeless ground game for the first half of the season a little bit of juice. Shane, I will say because you're a Colorado State grad, am I correct on that?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So if I don't know how closely you follow them like week to week anymore, but I'm assuming that you know the background of, Colorado State football and specifically the roster potentially more than we do. If I'm getting any details wrong, names wrong, I've done a fair amount of research this week and during the off
Mhm.
season to try to keep up with things, but feel free to jump in and correct me. Um,
Perfect. Yeah, and I will just quickly say I do. Um, I catch pretty much every Colorado State game, and it's been pretty miserable. The last time they made a bowl game was my freshman year in 2017. So for Texas fans that are a little bit cautious because they see the name Torrey Horton, potential All-American, and Braden Fowler Nicolosi apparently got offered 600,000 by Kansas State, and yada yada. They spread you out and they throw it around. The Colorado State teams that I have watched. Texas should have no problem on Saturday, regardless of style or whom they brought in. It should not be an issue. So this should really be a game where Texas is kind of playing against themselves and figuring some things out within the depth chart.
They sound a lot like Texas Tech to me.
You could say like a Walmart version of Texas Tech is a fair is a fair assessment. I mean they should be a bowl
That's all
team
that's
this.
in Lubbock is Walmart.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, they should be a bowl team this year for the first time in 7 years. But I don't think they're competing for a Mountain West title. I've seen, some people talk about, a sleeper Mountain West pick. I would be shocked. I think that this team just still has too many holes, especially along the lines of scrimmage, which is where Texas should push them around.
Yeah, no, I do agree there, Shane. And that's something I want to get into here in a little bit is kind of talking about more of the finer points of the matchups and where, not just where Texas can exploit Colorado State, because I do think it's a pretty lopsided matchup on paper, and I think it's going to be on the field on Saturday. But where Texas could have something to prove, and Tark, as you were speaking to at the beginning, where you can really start building on some of these foundational blocks before you head to Ann Arbor next week and that biggest game of the non-conference slate by a good margin. And I did an article on the site though earlier this week talking about some problematic Colorado State players. Obviously, Torrey Horton is that guy that when you think of who could actually do some damage to Texas this weekend, Texas's secondary was probably the weak point of the defense last season, especially with some opposing teams targeting their safeties, targeting them deep, really spreading Texas out, hitting some of the underneath crossers. I'm just naming some of the things that Texas really identified this offseason and worked on. And, whether it was going to the transfer portal to try to add some proven experience there, you get a guy like Andrew Makuba that really adds kind of that, I think, anchor experience to the safety position. Someone that gives you really solid new addition that rounds out your top 3 or 4 at the safety spot. And then corner, I think you got plenty of depth there. Jalen Gilbo's rise at the nickel position really gives you the ability to move Jahdae Barron around wherever you feel like you can go to get your best 5 guys in the secondary. But also, how are Gavin Holmes? How's Javion Cole doing? I think we have a lot of faith in Malik Muhammad that he's going to have a fantastic season. Really feel like he's on the brink of being like an all SEC guy this year. For the Colorado State side, they do have 2 solid safeties. It wouldn't surprise me, at least one of which might be playing in the NFL one day. They just have that sort of physicality to them. Henry Blackburn is one guy that I highlighted. Blackburn definitely made himself famous for the Travis Hunter hit last year. And obviously that whole big saga that kind of took over college football for a few days last September. And, Blackburn, though, he's a physical safety. He really understands timing, instincts, where to be, especially when he's playing down in the box, contesting space. Pass coverage is where he's weakest. If he's getting put one-on-one, you have a chance to burn him, especially with the speed that Texas brings. But I think if Texas tries to set the tone running the ball, Colorado State safeties, they can load the box and they can play a really physical brand of football if Texas isn't kind of ready to go. I look at the Rice game last year and, Texas wasn't having a ton of success running the ball early. And I think there's parts of the Colorado State defense, they got some linebackers that are going to play a lot of snaps for them this season and that have some good experience. But, this is week 1. These safeties, these linebackers, they are ready to go. They're ready to hit. Colorado State has a lot of these downhill guys. So just something to watch for, in my opinion. And then obviously on the other side of the ball, you got Torrey Horton, you got Colorado State's receiving core. Justin Marshall, I think, still someone to identify that, they're going to probably try to get the ground game going with. That said, he's a smaller back. Their offensive line is way overmatched. I think in this game, I don't find the Colorado State Brown game to be too much of a threat here. I think the receiving game is where Colorado State's really going to try to hammer Texas this weekend. I don't know if y'all have anything you want to build off of from the Colorado State side, maybe any guys that you kind of circled as someone to watch.
Well, Jack Howell actually led them in tackles last year, and he's a safety. If that gives you any indication that they don't have the guys in the front seven to hold that running game down, if your safeties are the leading tacklers, then that means you got some holes in that front seven. So I expect Texas to come out and dominate. Run some 12 personnel, two tight ends. Gunnar Helm, I expect him to get open as well. He's a great blocker. I think that Horton is a guy that they want to exploit in space, get him on some short screens, slants, try to get some mismatches on the linebackers. Defensively, I think this is a game that's set up nicely for my guy Anthony Hill Jr. I expect him to be all over the place from the edge, making plays. If they get him in third and long, you're going to see him come. So I think this is a big game, a test for those guys, scheme wise, blitzes, things they can mix up in coverage. You know, like you guys said, handed to Ann Arbor, this is one of those games.
Yeah, definitely expect Colorado State to be a better passing team than Michigan. So if Michigan knows that you can throw a forward pass in 2024, I don't know if they know that or not.
It depends on who they're starting at quarterback this year. I don't even know if they have that figured out yet.
I know no disrespect to JJ McCarthy. I hope that he has a speedy recovery, but I just, the past couple of years, it's like it didn't matter who was playing quarterback. All you had to do was hand the ball off or throw it like 3 yards.
I'll say one more thing on the Colorado State defense. I mean, Andrew and Mark, you both mentioned him by name, Jack Howell. He's been arguably the best player on Colorado State's defense since he was a freshman. And I think he's a two-time Mountain West first teamer, always around the football. He'll end the game on Saturday with 15 tackles. Whether that it won't affect the outcome, but just if you're keeping score at home, 17 will be around the ball a lot. And I mean, like Andrew mentioned, he probably has an NFL future. His dad played in the NFL. But he's a really good player, but he's not a game-changing player that's gonna, swing a 32-point spread.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, Mark, I actually like the point that you bring up about Colorado State's reliance on their safeties and how important those guys are to making plays for that defense. I looked at a stat or I kind of ran a stat earlier this week that really caught my eye. And while I'm saying that these are problematic players, I get that I'm kind of discounting my own point here. That said, do y'all want to guess what percentage of team tackles Colorado State's just two starting safeties, Jack Howell and Henry Bradford, had last year? Excuse me, Henry Blackburn.
Well, I'd say 45% at least.
I'll say 47.3, something like that.
Yeah, I'll go 38.
Shane, you're the closest. I will say it's not that high. So I'm just saying they're two starting safeties. I think if you expanded the whole safety position, the number would be higher, but it's 29%. Also 10% of their defensive stops, roughly 8% of their run stuffs. For comparison, 15% of Texas's total team tackles last season were from their two most productive safeties, and only 4% of their defensive stops. So Colorado State, twice as reliant on over as much, especially in the playmaking department. So just a little glimpse into some of their numbers there. But, expanding more to Colorado State as a whole and some of the matchups here, I do think that there's a number of ways that Texas can really get things rolling this weekend. I know y'all have mentioned it a little bit here and there and kind of gotten at it, but I think that one of the reasons why Texas will jump out early against Colorado State is just the ability to spread them out, use speed against the Colorado State secondary. This is a Colorado State secondary that I do believe has two new starters at cornerback, one guy from the portal, and the safeties. What's up?
I'm saying to him, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, Colorado State's pass defense last season, it was tough to measure against some of the teams they were playing. Air Force, for example, triple option offense. They in the Mountain West, you play a lot of run heavy offenses compared to a normal G5 conference. That said, Colorado State, I don't know where they really turn to be able to defend Texas, all the, pre-snap motion, all the speed that you've got on the field here. Because Colorado State, the one thing they're really lacking is just speed in range in the secondary. Um, I think that this is going to be a huge game for Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden. I think that Texas is going to look for different ways to get them involved. Granted, I don't think that Sark's going to show a whole lot in terms of what he's got up his sleeve this week. So, but I don't think he really needs to. I think he can just get Silas Bolden out in space and he can make a lot of things happen. He's played against this Mountain West type of competition for most of his collegiate career out at Oregon State. So I don't think this is really going to be a big deal for him. Um, but yeah, I'll pass it over to y'all because I'm sure in terms of what Sark is trying to do to really set the tone for this game, I'm sure that a lot of people have some sort of conjecture on what that game plan is going to do on Saturday.
Well, I don't think he wants to get caught with his hand in the cookie jar this early, so he may not show everything, but definitely I'm looking forward to seeing the plethora of receivers that the Longhorns have. I think a guy that people are not talking about is Jonte Cook. I think that he's a guy that's ready for a breakout year. He's proven it. He's been with Adonai Mitchell. He's been with Xavier Worthy. But, Ryan Wingo is a guy I'm very interested to see as well, the true freshman who's been getting all the accolades coming out of spring. This is probably the best receiving core in the country. I mean, find six guys that can start at any other group of five, power four, wherever you want to go. They can line it up and get it done. I think that that's what you want to see, in my opinion. Besides the running game, is how Sarkisian uses those wide receivers, the rotation.
One guy I'm really gonna have my eye on, you mentioned two of them, is DeAndre Moore. Reports are he's going to start in the slot. I do wonder that if Sark wasn't looking at the LA Rams, seeing what Jordan Whittington has done, and thinking, maybe I should have used that slot guy a little bit more. But DeAndre Moore, no pun intended, uses he kind of fits the Sarkisian model of being with that elite speed, great route runner. And when you have a guy like Bond on the outside and Golden on the outside, or obviously you'll have Bolden out there too, and Jonte Cook, you're going to have more going up against linebackers and safeties, and he's just going to run by people. I mean, I remember being so impressed with him, even though he dropped the ball in the his first spring game. I was like, man, this guy can get open. It was pretty amazing. So and the fact that he's going to start, that's a big deal. There are lots of guys who I first of all, I thought Golden was going to be in that spot. So when they said it's looking like Moore, I was like, okay, he's having a really good camp. So
One thing to piggyback off that, Tarik, I think one of the big reasons why Moore won that starting job was the fact that he was the most ready, willing, and able blocker, like the most effective outside blocker, which kind of gives you that presence that Jordan Whittington gave the Longhorns highest rated block or highest rated run blocker they had each of the last 3 seasons out of the slot. So, Moore, from what you were saying with that ability to work between the numbers like Jordan Whittington gave them, and also set the tone physically, because I think one of the reasons why Isaiah Bond is, let's not touch on that right now. Let's say that Isaiah Bond might have Adonai Mitchell like issues getting settled in the physicality department. Matthew Golden too, though. I don't know if he's necessarily showed what the staff was hoping, because he was a decent blocker.
but Bond isn't a giant like Adonai Mitchell was. But Mitchell
No,
was too big to not wanting to block. Bond is a shifty guy who acts like a shifty guy. You know,
yeah,
you can't be Goliath and be like, nah, I don't want to do that. Come on. Yeah.
it's fair. But yeah, I wanted to make the point on Moore that among all these new starters, having that leader, that kind of tone setter physically, and being able to block for the zone scheme heavy offense on the ground, or wherever it is, blocking downfield even, I think that's really important.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off that. I mean, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see the wide receiver rotation. I think if Sark's smart, he's going to get all of them 5 touches instead of, force feeding one. And I assume that will happen. I also am interested to see how the running back rotation shakes out. I mean, we're pretty sure it's Blue at RB1, Wisner at RB2, and then Gibson and Gardner. But how does Sark protect Jaden Blue? Because Jaden Blue clearly is going to be chomping at the bit to carry the ball 20 times, but I don't really think that's worth it in week 1 against Colorado State when you're hoping to play 16 or 17 games this season. And also the tight end rotation. I think we are going to notice the absence of JT Sanders. I know we're all high on Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis and Amari Niblock, and even Jordan Washington for that. But JT Sanders was just so dominant in the middle of the field. So, what does the tight end rotation look like? Are there receptions kind of off scheme plays from Sark? Or are they making plays across the middle of the field? Things of that nature, I'm going to keep my eye on because I think that's a position that has to evolve throughout the season if the Texas offense wants to reach its ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, for the tight end room, I actually did an article earlier today talking about freshmen that are likely to redshirt for Texas this year. Do y'all think Jordan Whittington ends up taking a redshirt this year? Or do you think he ends up contributing pretty
You mean
consistently as kind of maybe that third or fourth
Jordan
tight end?
Washington?
Huh?
You mean Washington?
Did I say Whittington? Yeah, sorry, getting names mixed
Like
up there. Yeah,
Whittington's already in the NFL.
nah,
He's not
yeah.
going to take a.
Jay Wash.
I don't. But to answer your question straightforward, I don't. I'm going to say no because I think they're going to use him enough that it's. I think he will play a lot.
I I think so. When you're looking at a guy who's probably fourth on the depth chart right now, my thing is if there are no injuries and he doesn't play on special teams, then he probably will get a red shirt. Like they're not going to just play him in 5 games just to burn that red shirt. So I think if there are no injuries and he's likely not to be a special teamer. I mean, I don't really see where he'd fit in. Maybe on blocking on kickoffs. I'm not sure, but I think he probably will redshirt. But the way he's been developing in fall camp, it looks like he might not even matter in regard to how many years he stays on the 40. So
That's one thing I was going to say before I messed up names there was that Jeff Banks has been speaking really highly of him. Probably the best he's spoken of a tight end since JT Sanders a couple of years ago, which I think is very telling, like you were saying, Shane, of just how far he's come. And I probably say how far ahead of schedule and how he's exceeded expectations at this point of his development curve as a true freshman. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. You also got to figure, too, with some of the reps that Juan Davis is probably getting in the backfield. I don't think they're abandoning that game plan to get Juan Davis maybe a couple of touches. And there's, kind of what you were seeing with like Rashawn Johnson or Savion Red, that sort of wildcat formation. Juan Davis, he's a bigger guy. He's got a good understanding of the offensive schemes, blocking, things like that. And he can run physically. I think they're still going to, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him doing that sort of thing a couple of times this weekend if the situation calls for it. Because I think teams already know what's going to happen when you bring Juan Davis out on the field. I don't think you're really showing anything that they're not prepared for there.
and kind of relating back to JT Sanders, Sanders, I don't know if he redshirted as a freshman, but he finished the season with 0 catches. Like he did not.
Yeah,
he did redshirt.
Did he redshirt?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So I mean, if Jatavian Sanders and who was ahead of him, you had Cade Brewer and Jared Wiley. So if JT Sanders doesn't see the field as a freshman, I mean, I know Banks has been speaking highly of Washington.
Helm was playing right away too.
Okay, that's fair. So maybe don't take too much from the past, but I don't know. I just don't see unless injuries
You have to
aside.
be able in Sark's system. If you can't block, you're not going to play tight end. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Put it this way,
Yeah,
instead of sorry to cut you off, Mark. Instead of the red shirt question, do I think Jordan Washington will be a meaningful contributor to the team this year? My answer would be no. And if the answer is yes, I think that's because you've suffered some injuries at the tight end position.
Mark,
yeah, the short and sweet of it, man. I kind of agree with Shane there. You don't want to burn a red shirt just because. I think they have a three deep at tight end that's pretty solid with Helm and Amari Knobloch getting the majority of those snaps. And you mentioned, that's the thing about letting Savion Red go is that wildcat goal line formation. He was perfect for that. And he got a chance to really stretch his legs in the SMU game this week. And we saw what he could have been, now that the Longhorns have these injuries, this would have been the perfect time for Savion to come in and get his reps, but I think that Washington's a guy that's really been, climbing the ladder. They see some development there. Like Shane said, JT Sanders took a red shirt, and he was a 5-star recruit, one of the top players. He could have played on the defensive side. He chose to play on offense. So I think that Washington's going to get some snaps, but you don't burn that red shirt just quite yet until it need be, and you definitely have to block at tight end in Sark's offense because they run 12 personnel in the goal line and short yardage and slip those tight ends out of the backfield on out routes and wheel routes. So if you can't block them, you don't play.
I think it's interesting with, Mark, you mentioned in being able to, really contribute in every sense of the word as a tight end. One of the things that happened this offseason was the NCAA expanded the redshirt rules, or I guess actually minimized them to where postseason conference championship games, so like playoff, all that sort of stuff, does not count toward the 4-game redshirt rule. So I think you're seeing it, with how fast Washington has kind of come along and shown that he is, if he is needed, that he's ready to make an impact for the tight end position for the Longhorns. That if we've seen those designed schemes to get guys like Gunnar Helm open before, Washington is a better receiver than he is a blocking tight end. I think we would all agree on that front. I get him involved in some of those, yeah, down the road if he's shown that he's ready to do that. I mean, a risky proposition if it's an SEC championship game, big moment, but I'll be honest, I would probably take Jordan Washington as a route runner and a receiver 8 times out of 10 over Gunnar Helm, basically anyone besides Amari Niblack on this roster. I think Spencer Shannon, to y'all's point about getting some of these other guys some run here, I think Spencer Shannon could be a contributor. I'll dig us back out of the rabbit hole of going, all the way down the tight end depth chart conversation here. Focusing back on Colorado State, talking about spreading them out and really finding ways that Texas can get going on offense early. One of the things that is just a no-brainer here is that Texas can dominate the trenches in this game. Colorado State, their average size on the defensive line is under 300 pounds. It's about 6'2.5". Their best edge rusher, I'm losing his name, but their best returning edge rusher is out with like a foot injury this weekend. And so he's their most productive pass rusher. So Colorado State, I don't think I think they're going to be pretty quiet up front. Texas, you're returning 4 out of 5 starters along the offensive line. You got big humans that are ready to maul this weekend, and a lot of them have a 30-plus pound advantage on who they'll be matching up with against the Colorado State defense. I will say this. I don't think that we see Jaden, talking about similar point to what y'all were saying a moment ago with the running backs, I don't think we see Jaden Blue in that many third and short or goal line situations. I think you're going to see a lot of Jarrett Gibson early this season in those situations. So I thought it was an interesting moment for him. He fumbled the ball on the goal line, not to call him out here. But in the first fall scrimmage, it seemed like he kind of got in some deep water there because he had a bad fumble on the goal line, didn't have good ball security, which obviously Texas emphasizes beginning to end in individual drills and fall camp each year with Sarkisian and his staff. I think that Jared Gibson since then has really turned a page and has gotten down to work. And I think he can be a 6 to 10 carry guy in these sort of games. So I think he's someone to watch this weekend. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm really interested to see what this top combo of Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton looks like against a smaller offensive line. We haven't seen that pairing all too consistently, just obviously as the top group. We've seen the pairing before, but the edge rushers, they've never been this good around Broughton and Collins before. And now they're with the top unit. So whether it's Sorrell, Burke, Trey Moore, for whoever. Texas has like 5 or 6 guys at edge they can
I
trot
think
out
it's
there and be effective.
I think it's more Sorrell they're starting on the edges.
Moore right now is expected to be a starter at Sam more so than he is.
Right, but that's like in base. We're probably going to run like a lot of four down with like more like a 2-4-5 kind of a thing, it
Yeah.
seems.
It also depends if they decide to put him out there specifically with a package swinging downhill more as a hybridized edge or
Yeah.
like more of like a 6 or 7 tech. I don't know. There's a number of things that they've done. I think they're going to be really interesting, but you might be right. There more can go anywhere, I think, and be really effective in this game. Um,
We should have some sacks in this game.
yes. Long story short, so I wanted to ask you all this because Tark, you kind of jumped me to the point. Who is I've circled one name that I think. Who do y'all think? And Mark, I think I've got a hung or like kind of a hunch of what yours will be. But who do y'all think is the sack leader for this weekend for the Longhorns?
I'm gonna go because this guy just has enough. I'm gonna go with Colin Simmons.
Out of the gates. Okay.
I mean, he was selected to the Sean Alexander freshman watch list along with Ryan Wingo this
Yeah.
week. Uh, and he can come in and spell some of those guys in third down situations and really get off the ball. He was a 5-star recruit for a reason. Had a chance to see him as a sophomore, and he looked like he was ready for college then. I expect him to really get after it. He's got a point to prove. But I also want to see some of these veterans step up. Ethan Burke's a guy that's long and lengthy off the edge. I think he's a guy that's unsung that maybe people aren't talking about. Alfred Collins and Baron Sorrell have to pick up from where the other guys left off that are going to the NFL and Byron Murphy and Sweat. So that's the key to what we're doing. And then I would expect Anthony Hill to have a couple of tackles for loss too. They really got to move him around, kind of like uh, they did before. So I think that those guys are going to be nip and tuck trying to really get to the quarterback. But I think Colorado State will counter by getting the ball out quick because they're going to have their horns peeled back trying to get to the quarterback.
I'm going Ethan Burke. Like I said last video, I think he's going to lead the team in sacks this year, so might as well notch a couple in the first week.
I'm gonna go with Baron Sorrell. He had a really big season opener a couple of years ago, if y'all remember, against ULM.
Yeah, I remember.
Had a sack and a half or 2 sacks, something like that. Quite a few quarterback pressures. And he had, I think it was 3 QB pressures in the opener last year against Rice, just didn't get home on any of them. Um,
It was
JT did.
Sorrell who had that like amazing game against TCU back that year they went to the national championship, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because I'm looking at game logs, right? Yeah, I just pulled them up.
Yeah.
11 tackles, three
I was just
TFLs, two
waiting for Max
sacks.
Duggan to just not get up after some of
And a
those.
batted ball. Yeah, he was just everywhere, man. Havoc
Yeah,
machine. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, this seems like the type of game that just Sorrell's going to be revved up and ready. He just seems to get better every year, and I know that his forte more consistently has been setting the edge as a run defender, but like I would be lying if I said he wasn't at least an above average pass rusher at the edge position in the Power Five or Power Four now. And so I'm going with him, but I mean, it shows how we've kind of reached a new point of the edge discussion for the Longhorns that we have 4 or 5 answers, all of which could easily be correct on Saturday. It's a great thing having that conversation. So about the edge position, at defensive tackle, is there anyone you guys could see stepping up this weekend that might not be in that top, kind of that top 4 rotation?
Norton and Lowell, I think we're going to notice more against
Oh,
Michigan.
yeah.
You're really going to need them. That's when you're really going to need that SEC strength and size. Not that Alfred Collins certainly has that, but I think that's when you really see those two. If it's an air raid, you're going to see the defensive tackles, rushing, but like not trying to get home as much, trying to make sure they're getting in the way of passes. Which Alfred Collins is just a freak athlete. He's gonna do something this week. They're gonna be like, yeah, He's got that in him.
Lole is really good in these situations too. I mean, he's quick, he's strong, he's got a good wingspan, and he's pretty disruptive. So I like that you mentioned him. Savea, I do wonder. I'm interested to see who they use mostly in that second group because I think Bill Norton is going to be one of those guys just because he's probably the most consistent presence at nose. Big 6'6", kind of 325, 330-pound guy there that can anchor and two gap. But like
He's like Devondre, wet big.
yeah, not as good, but he's effective. Um,
Yeah.
I, I want to. Sorry, I'm kind of interrupting you. I want to see Aaron Bryant. I know he's kind of been working his way as that third guy in the rotation. I just want to see someone else who can play nose really step up. I think we need a kind of that third guy. So
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
ag- I
Yeah.
I, I agree. I was going to go with Lole and Norton as well, but Vernon Broughton's a guy that definitely needs to bring something to the table as well, giving them some depth, giving some guys that can sub in and out in different packages. I agree when they go up to Michigan, they're going to need some big bodies because Michigan's going to want to pound the football and establish the running game early.
Yeah, for me,
Oh, yeah. Sorry, you
I
go ahead.
mean, yeah, I mean the staff has been waiting for Dre Bledsoe to kind of find something. And if it's not early on in this season, then it may be somewhere else. So I'm hoping it's one of those games where second half comes along, Texas is up 4 scores, and but Dre Bledsoe is on the screen a lot making plays.
If it's you're talking about some of those now or never guys along the defensive line rotation, Sadir Mitchell. I think he's starting to reach that point. So Bledsoe, I think, and Mitchell both fit into that same category. All right. Um. Okay. So
Mitchell's another one I want to see against Michigan because that's going to be a
yeah,
trench game.
that's true.
If Texas can run the ball and do play action, that game's going to get ugly.
Yeah. So there's one other point that I want to mention here that I think can really make this game get out of hand early or really help Texas kind of build a big lead in the first half against Colorado State. One of the things that hasn't been talked about a lot is Colorado State's turnovers. They've had an issue managing turnovers since last season. Fowler Nicolosi is a solid quarterback, no doubt about it. That said, he was a freshman, first year full time starter last year. Had some issues with turnovers, 16 interceptions, had a few fumbles as well, I believe. Colorado State ranked 129th in the FBS in offensive turnovers last season. Texas also one of, I believe it's around 2025 FBS teams that averaged over an interception per game. And I think the secondary is even better this year. So that's another thing that I think could be a separator in this game early on. Um, let's go ahead and jump into score predictions for the game on Saturday. I have not done my prediction yet, so I'm just kind of free balling here, even though I think I set a score at the beginning of the broadcast or the show. So, um, Mark, I'll let you go ahead and start here.
I'll go with 31-14. I think that they come out early, get a couple touchdowns, a field goal. Colorado State's going to mix it up and try to go fast, like you said, and get the ball to Horton. How comfortable Fowler Nicolosi is in the first half is going to be, pertinent to what they do. The weather, the elements is going to be hot. How do they respond to that? Is everybody hydrated? Do we see a bunch of game stoppages for cramps and things like that? The flow of the game, those are some of the things that you got to look for coming out in that first game. Who gets hitting them out first? Does if they win the toss, if Texas wins the toss, do they receive or do they go out on defense first to establish that defensive identity? And I think it's a key for those guys to get turnovers on defense as well. Those corners, Muhammad, Jabay Barron, and those guys, I think they got to be opportunistic, but not too overly aggressive where they give up a big play over top. Because Horton's a guy that can take it and go to the house with it real quick. So 31-14 is what I look the final score to be.
Okay. Shane?
Yeah, so I have a 55-17. Um, I just think that the second team offense is going to run with such efficiency that we're really not going to see much of a drop off until you potentially get to Trey Owens in the fourth quarter. Sark mentioned that he wants to see a lot of guys play in the first half. So, I mean, a lot of guys really, really hungry to get out there. And Sark now in year 4 has really built up the depth. Mark hit on a good point, being kind of opportunistic with the turnovers. Colorado State passing game, as Andrew mentioned, Braden Feller, Nicolosi, 16 picks last year. Rhythm passing game, I could easily see Manny Muhammad or Jade Barron stepping in for a pick six on some of these out routes or hitches because it is kind of, don't even look, throw it to a spot type of offense. So yeah, looking I think it should be, it shouldn't be too stressful and more just kind of looking to see who steps up from the second and third teams.
Tark.
Uh, yeah, Shane went a field goal higher than I was going to go. I say 52-17, but for the same reasons. I do think we'll see a good dose of Arch Manning and Trey Owens, and I'm excited to see them too.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I'm gonna go with I'll go 48-17. I liked the 17 48-21. I think that Colorado State's going to manage to get. I think there's going to be a lot of possessions, a lot of back and forth in this game. I also wouldn't be surprised if Texas has a special teams mishap here or there on Saturday, punting the football. Um, Michael Kern sounds like he's going to be the guy, but true freshman, we'll see. Um, I do think that Colorado State's going to have a turnover too early. Shane, I like that you mentioned Barron and Muhammad. I was going to actually say something about that. In the final 4 games last season, they had 6 pass breakups, and I call them 3 interception opportunities, 2 dropped interceptions, or just like tip balls or something like that, more than a pass breakup, actually an opportunity to get hands on it. But yeah, so they had a lot of opportunities late last season. I think they can, you know, kind of keep that nose for the football and get an interception on Saturday. Um, all right, so let's look more at the SEC, Texas's season as a whole now. Um, each of y'all, there's 3 things I'm going to ask from you. Um, SEC championship game prediction, Texas's record, where they finish. And then last, I'm looking at prize picks here. They have Quinn Ewers at 2,999.5 passing yards for the season. Does he finish over or under that?
Okay, I'll go first. So you say SEC championship game prediction?
Yeah. Texas
I'm
season
gonna
prediction, and then the Quinn Ewers over under for passing yards.
okay. Texas will go 11-1. They will drop to either Georgia or Oklahoma. I don't care how bad Oklahoma is or how good they are. You can never count on the Red River rivalry to be a win. It's just that it just doesn't work that way. Um, God is all knowing. He doesn't know how that game's going to turn out. So that lets you know that. Championship game, I'm going to say Texas, and we're going to see our old friend Kalen DeBoer, Alabama. They're going to be in the SEC title game. Then, and what were the numbers on Quinn Ewers?
2,999.5 passing yards. That's just for the regular season. Over or under.
Yeah, right. Wait, I'm taking the over on that one.
All right.
I'm president of the fan club, though, so I'm biased.
I hope he stays healthy for a full season.
If Quinn Ewers stays healthy, he's gonna break some records.
Yeah, I mean, he's on pace for some right now, and I obviously think he's going to have his
Because we're
best.
gonna throw the ball a lot more, now, especially with only three real scholarship running backs. You just can't. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna run the ball, but we're not gonna quite do what we would have if we had Baxter and Clark available.
Right. Yeah. More threats at different positions. Shane, what do you got?
So regular season, I have 10-2 with the losses coming against Georgia and unfortunately at A&M. That game's just giving me the heebie-jeebies, and I might as well predict a loss. And then if it does happen, I don't feel as bad. Um, but man, if there's one game I think I'll say this for everyone: if there's one game we can have on the schedule, it's that one. Um, But I do think Texas sneaks into the SEC championship with the 6-2 conference record, plays Georgia and loses to Georgia again. So 10-3, but solidly in the college football playoff. And then yeah, the Quinn Ewers
So
number,
two losses to Georgia.
2 losses to Georgia. Yep. If a third time comes around, it's hard to beat a team 3 times. That's what they say in the NFL. So, but uh, if Uh, Quinn Ewers stays healthy, he's going to go over it. 250 yards a game would be a 3,000 yard season. So I think the number clearly just has his injury history baked into it. So I'm going to go over. Also, a great point by Tarik uh, with the running back situation. And so I think you're going to see a lot of like tunnel and bubble screens and tight end screens, just to pick up some easy yards.
All right, Mark.
As far as the season goes, I agree. The Red River rivalry is always a slippery slope. There's a lot of emotion with that. Uh, we have to see how both teams come into that. I like them going 11-1 with the loss coming to Georgia, going back to the SEC title game and facing Georgia, but getting into the playoff. I think when Sark has played a team a second time, there's been some adjustments, and I think that they'll be able to scheme that and get things together. And they'll be kind of mad about that taking a loss at home to Georgia. I think that Georgia's going to come in there probably number one in the country, and it'll be a top 10 matchup for sure. I do, Shane. I do agree with you. I do have the fuzzy wuzzies about that A&M game just because they hadn't played each other in so long, and the whole state's going to be tuning in. And we snatched the baseball coach from them, Schlegel and stuff like that. There's going to be some bad blood there as well. But that's a toss-up kind of game. As far as the over/under on, I think definitely Quinn gets over 3,000 yards for sure. I mean, he's primed and ready for this. He's been waiting his opportunity. His ability to stay healthy is going to be the key. If we can keep him healthy, keep him clean, he's going to carve defenses up. And I believe that he's going to be on the Heisman watch list probably mid-season if everything aligns up like it should be. So I think that's something that you'll see. And I think that Texas is due for a big season. This is what they do. You know what I mean? I really see this team and the coaching staff has really put their imprint on the program as a whole. I mean, look how much recruiting's picked up with the commitments that we have in the 2025 class. And we possibly got another one coming here later on this week. So I think these guys are primed and ready for it. I think they get into the SEC title game and sneak in the playoff as well. But I like Texas's chances. I'm really excited about it. I can't wait till they kick off against Colorado State. And those are the things that I'm looking forward to out of the Longhorns this year.
Yeah, I think as far as the Texas season prediction goes, I'm sticking kind of with the pace here and going with 2 losses for the regular season. I just think that October and November, there's some really difficult games there. Yeah, I mean, they're going to lose one of Georgia or Oklahoma, I think. I think that's unavoidable. If they win both, that's great, but you're probably going to have to get some luck to get over the finish line with both of those with a W. And in November, I think you got some trap games that could be difficult. I think that Kentucky game, the Florida game, both those could be difficult, even though they're both coming at home. I think it depends on how Florida season goes. I think it's going to be interesting to watch that Florida Miami game on Saturday to see how Florida sets the tone to start the season. If they start the season with a loss, that's going to be tough for Billy Napier to keep that locker room together, I think. Miami's a good team, so I don't think it's bad necessarily to lose that game, but you know, that'll be pretty indicative. And then, yeah, the A&M game, I mean, it's the similar feeling you get with Venables with OU in the sense that you're getting this defensive tactician here, someone that knows how to evaluate that talent. And yeah, I mean, everyone in the state's going to be tuning in for this. They've been waiting for this for a long time. Elko, a guy that came from A&M before, understands this rivalry and what it means. And they still got a lot of talent on defense. I would not be surprised if A&M is just going to have some corks on defense to throw at Texas. I'm not saying that's going to be the loss in November, but I think there's one. I think it's probably either Kentucky or A&M, just based on the situations I was describing for each of those games. I still think that's enough to get Texas into the SEC championship game. I would presume against Georgia. Although I will say I'm pretty high on Ole Miss this season. I think that their defensive line is really good. I think their receivers are really good. Their edges are really good, and their quarterback play is really good. So I think they got a lot of the ingredients you need to be a really good team. I mean, Lane Kiffin hasn't really reached quite that peak yet as a head coach. He got close last season with the 11 wins, and Ole Miss has a difficult schedule again this weekend, or this season, excuse me. One thing to note about A&M, they're the only ranked team in the SEC this preseason that doesn't have a single ranked SEC game on the road. So they have a pretty favorable schedule. I know they have the Notre Dame game this weekend, but that's something to note. They might be sneaky good this year. I say that because I know they're like number 20, but they could work their way around the top 10, I think. I think Elko is a pretty good head. I think he's going to prove to be a pretty good head coach there. I'm going to actually go under on Quinn. I think he's going to finish around that 2,800 mark for the regular season. If I'm going with the trend of the injury history here, let's say he misses a game or two. I also think that you're going to see a lot of Arch Manning during non-conference play and in games like potentially even Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, where you're probably looking at 4 to 5 games here where Quinn, I'd say 4 safely, where Quinn might not be playing the entire second half. So that's going to take away some of his passing yards. Keep in mind that between Wyoming and Texas Tech last year, 2 games that Texas should have or did win by a lot, Quinn had a combined 260 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. So just something to keep in mind there. I think that's about all I got. Anything else y'all want to add for this weekend?
Nope.
All right. Stay tuned on the site. There's a couple other writers we got that I'm going to get game predictions from, and we'll get the write-up for that before the game on Saturday. As well, one thing, I'm a little late to this, I know, but stay tuned if y'all are big like EA College Football 25 fans, and y'all been playing that a lot. I'm running an EA Dynasty Sim right now. I will say for anyone on this, Texas started out 1-0, 45-7 win over Colorado State for week 1, but lost in what was a fourth quarter thriller of a comeback against Michigan for week 2. Lost 26-23, but Texas went into the fourth quarter down 23-0. So I don't know what happened in that sim because you can't watch the game like while it's being played for some reason on Dynasty mode now, but something crazy there. So I'll be posting those results in some sort of Twitter or X thread over the next few days and finish out that stuff there because I think it's going to be fun to do. But yeah, right now Texas 1-1, but by the time this video is posted tomorrow, I think I'll probably have 6 of the games posted on there. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the site, and we will be back with y'all next week. Talking about Michigan, recapping Colorado State. Anyway, for Andrew Miller, Tarik LaCour, Shane Black, Marc Henry from Hook'emHeadlines.com, Hook'em Horn Show. That's pretty much it. Hook'em.
Hook'em.
Hook 'em.